So today we're looking at some Marvel Universe or some Marvel Superheroes Advanced Set product, and we're rolling ourselves back to the mid-80s, and what we're going to be looking at today is the other means of making a character. So as we've discussed previously, you can roll it up and go through the randomization process. You can use a pre-generated character, or you can use what is called modeling, which is where you take an existing hero or character and then convert them into the Marvel Superheroes game. So this is what we're looking at today. We're looking at some modeling to build a character, and in fact, going with some theme, today we are going to be looking at the Green Hornet. So we're not going to be looking at the original radio series Green Hornet, or even the very earliest movie Green Hornet serials, and we're certainly avoiding at all costs the modern movie. We're not really touching on the comic either, but what we'll be looking at is that very classic and that wonderful Green Hornet from the 1960s with Bruce Lee and Van Williams. And let's get on and we'll sort of figure out how to make this character.
Another challenge for the Green Hornet. His aide, Kato, and their rolling arsenal, the Black Beauty. On police records, a wanted criminal, the Green Hornet is really Britt Reed, owner-publisher of the Daily Sentinel. His dual identity known only to his secretary and to the district attorney. And now, to protect the rights and lives of decent citizens, rides the Green Hornet.
So the first thing we need to do is look at what we're aiming at achieving. And of course we're looking at the character of the Green Hornet from the TV series. And yes, I've had to painstakingly watch all episodes in order to be able to fully understand what it is that the character can do. And once I've achieved that, then I'm able to use the guides that are within the judge's book to work out exactly where the Green Hornet stats will sit and live. And so as we look at each of the stats, we will then say, right, this is where we think the Green Hornet is, and this is the reason why. As the player, the first role is to obviously hedge all the bets and to work out how I can maximize everything. So I'm going to go in with everything that I want and hand that over to the judge, and the judge will then have a look at it and make some clear decisions as to whether or not that is exactly where they want, or they think that the character should be. So let's get in and have a look. So the first thing I'm going to be looking at is, of course, the fighting, because that's the top of the list. And when I'm looking at this, I watch what Green Hornet does and how I feel he is across the board. Knowing the character as we do, we know that he's capable of getting stuck into the melee, but exactly at what point. So as we see here, we've got some formal training and then regular formal training being excellent. As the player, I am going to want to be aiming at excellent or remarkable. Probably excellent is my go-to. Regular formal training. And I want to put it out there that obviously Kato is different, and we love Kato. So Kato is but Kato will also be involved in general training of the Green Hornet. So they will have lots of different ways of practicing and working out what they're doing. So here we are with some formal training or regular formal training. And that's where we sort of figure out where we're at. So as a player, I'm hedging my bets and going with excellent, and we'll start from there. Looking at agility. So agility has a lot of room, and you're looking at, Olympic gymnast up at incredible, and superhuman's level sort of starts at that amazing. So if you're a normal human, you can still try and hit those excellence, remarkables and incredibles. We don't believe at all that Britt Reed is any part of that, so we'll be coming back down towards that, some training in dexterity and accuracy, which puts him sort of at the Colossus and Invisible Woman level. So in terms of strength, we're all about normal humans. So we're talking typical or good. Now, I'm going to be mindful that I'm hoping to keep the higher level of fighting as what I'm at. And since I also have an idea about how the judge is going to react, I'm not going to push for good. I'm going to stick with typical. And what we'll do is we'll hope that by going typical here, that will give us a few extra brownie points when we're making the case for the fighting ability. Over at endurance, we're definitely sticking with excellent as regular exercise, and that can be covered so easily as the Playboy billionaire or Playboy millionaire. He's not quite in that billionaire category, and he has to show up to work every day, so he's not exactly that Playboy, but he has a good life, and he certainly does look after himself, and he definitely keeps a strong physical regimen going, which sort of, again, we're looking at excellent, and we'll keep it, hopefully, this will help him keep alive and is going to be quite useful down the way. So excellent is the option that we're looking for here. So in terms of reason, at no point have we ever seen him make anything or create anything, but we also know that he was involved in the design and creations of the Black Beauty and his tools, so that gives him at the very least a good level of, well, not good, sorry, in terms of the rank, but as in like an understanding of the technology of the day. Yes, this series was set in the 1960s, but if we put it into a similar sort of scenario, he would easily be in that excellent to remarkable category. And being that we're a high-tech hero, which is the origin on which we would be sitting at, squeezing out remarkable is not out of the ordinary of what we're, out of the realms of what we're after. And remarkable is going to show up in terms of where a lot of some of the powers and tools that he has will sit in roughly around that space, so it makes sense. So what we were going to aim at is a remarkable level. So he's not in the incredible, but for understanding alien technology, but he's definitely has a good grasp of everything in the current mines, like in the current setting. Now, in terms of intuition, what we're looking at here is how, as well as the detective element to him, in which case we know that he's a good detective and he's got strong deductive reasonings. As a reporter, he also knows what he's looking for in terms of a story. What we're going to be sitting at here is either good or excellent for his intuition, and probably, again, as the player, I'm floating excellent, so we'll see where we can play with that. if we can make our case. There are numerous episodes of the TV show where Britt has used some amazing deductive abilities in order to problem solve, and also to solve the problems and to solve the puzzles that are being left by the syndicates. So, aiming at excellent, and we'll move on from there. Psyche represents quite a reasonable, like the strength of will, as determination, as well as levels of connectedness to magic and the mystical arts. We're coming in here definitely at that good level. He's not overly resistant, but he's stronger willed than the normal human. There was a handful of episodes involving mesmerism that he was able to shake off and keep his wits about him for long enough. So good is definitely where I'm going to be sitting as the rank in this instance. His personal resources and the resources of his paper, the publisher and owner of the Daily Sentinel, which also has a television arm as well as the print media. He is definitely in his own as excellent, in my mind, with the business being in that likely remarkable or incredible. Often businesses and corporates are 2 resource ranks higher than the character, and so when you own a company you generally have 2 ranks of resources. That's not a given, it's just a general-ish. But with him at excellent, it's a small inheritance, which is what he has. Small businesses, he's sort of only got 2. Yes, he's not quite the media mogul, but he has enough of enough capital behind him to be able to make that happen. And of course, his business is likely to be either remarkable or incredible. It would not be anything larger than that. Even incredible might be pushing it, so it could still be in that remarkable phase of where he's at, a larger business or a chain of businesses, and so on. So as you can see with these descriptions, there's plenty of spaces to play with, and lots of discussion to be had of who sits in what and where. So from here we'll have a look at the next phase of character creation, where we pen out some of the powers that be. So as a recap, this is pretty much what we're looking at the moment. Fighting, agility, strength, endurance, excellent, resources, reason, intuition, and psyche, with his personal resources and his company's resources. So what we're looking at hopefully gaining is excellent, good, typical, excellent, remarkable, excellent, and good. Hand these over to the judge. Once we've got that sorted, then we'll see where the judge thinks things might be. Now our next step is to look at powers, and by looking at the powers we look at what the Green Hornet uses and has used during the series, and come up with some kit just to sort of see whereabouts things are. So as a character that has no actual powers, he's got equipment. His key pieces of equipment are the Hornet gun, which fires a gas pellet and knocking out most people, and he has the Hornet Sting, which is an energy blast that he rarely uses. In fact, he never used against a person, but he has used it to knock down doors, to collapse steel, and so on. So we have 2 primary weapons, being the Hornet gun and the Hornet Sting. And of course we know he has the Black Beauty, which is a vehicle, and vehicles we need to look at slightly differently, and we can take it from there. But we'll do the Hornet gun and the Hornet Sting. As I said, if he's got his original product that he can then manipulate and change, then that obviously makes things a lot easier for him. He's not so much a build your own type of guy, but definitely into that modification of technology. So as a player, I've looked at the Hornet gun and decided that it was a modified targeting pistol, and with a knockout gas pellets instead of firing just a single shot, and remarkable knockout gas which knocks somebody out for 1 to 10 rounds. The Hornet Sting is essentially an energy blast of remarkable strength with heat as its primary field, and this gives you his ability to fire at distance as well, because it's an energy blast, and the heat allows him to melt certain things that he's melted and blow apart steel canisters and steel doors, which sort of fall in that excellent, remarkable category, and he's able to bust locks. So they're the 2 key weapons that he has, and that's what we're proposing as his 2 products. Working out vehicles, you've got some other stats which are involved with the control, so that's the driving ability, and it's the control of in ranks or the person's agility, depending on whatever's lower, then adjusted by all the column shifts from skills and situations. So the Black Beauty being a 1966 Chrysler Imperial, which was meant to be a luxury vehicle, we've just done a modified luxury car. I've added 1 rank to the controls from the luxury car poor to typical, increased its speed. The body is remaining the same, excellent, but it does have remarkable protection for the people, passengers inside the car. Now the Black Beauty, any shots we had of the back seat didn't have the full limo feel. It was definitely a large luxury car, not the security limo or something along that lines. And then we can add weapons later. We'll start with maybe just the drone, which is something that you can purchase because that's available. As the Black Beauty had a couple of projectile weapons and the ability to gas, to launch to fill the area that it was in with the Hornet sleeping gas, and it also possessed a drone which allowed you to follow and track the other cars that he was stalking or following people and so on. So those will also get factored in, but what we're looking at today is mostly the rest of everything else, but we'll just leave the Black Beauty as it is, because when you're modeling a character, you don't have to conform to a lot of the rules that go with being a fresh character, and that can make it a little bit more powerful in some instances, and that's why what the player wants then hands over to the DM or the judge, and then the judge gets to have that final say. So in terms of the added weaponry, I'm going to leave that in the hands of the judge, because they weren't primary weapons and it wasn't really a focus on. I mean, we love the Black Beauty, we love it when they get in the car and they drive, but it wasn't like the main part of his personality. So now we go on to talents. So going through everything that Britt Reed does and looking at the character, it was a matter of breaking down what I thought he had and what I thought he did. I don't think he's a master of business and finance, but I do believe that he would have skills in journalism. He's occasionally does his own columns in the paper, as well as his own pieces on the on the TV shows, so the TV news, which lends itself to journalism. The other thing I'm keen on is repair and tinkering, rather than an actual engineering or a more of a mechanical background. And in terms of combat, what I'm aiming at are martial arts A and B, which are kind of useful. The martial arts A allows him to stun and slam opponents regardless of comparative strengths and endurances. So when you are punching someone and you roll a result to knock them out, or do you roll a result to slam them, then you need to compare your strength with the opponent's endurance. If your strength is higher than of an equal or higher rank than the endurance, you get to inflict that result. If your strength is less, you don't. So the martial arts A allows you to bypass that test. So when someone with typical strength punches someone who has remarkable endurance, they are able to still potentially slam and stun their opponents. Martial arts B provides a +1 to unarmed combat slugfest, to their melee fists as such. Lots of scribble and lots of notes, but going back and forth and really looking at the Black Beauty, I kind of like how I've done the stats for that and given it 2 projectile weapons, one that's an anti-vehicle, which is incredible damage, and one that's anti-personnel for excellent. There was nothing that suggested that they were dummy rounds or knocked people out. They looked like real bullets, but it was something that he only ever fired in very rare circumstances. And the rockets were primarily anti-vehicle. And then of course you got the knockout gas, which affects everything in the area. Same deal, remarkable 1 to 10 for the knockout. And the drone, which of course has to have its own little stats. Looking at options, it was control being typical, speed good, body poor, and then protection feeble. So essentially it's got a 2 body armor, but it only has like about 6 hit points, 4 hit points, so if somebody wants to shoot it out of the sky, they can. For chasing people and following things, speed good is usually enough, unless they're super fast or they've got higher accelerations, higher speeds eventually. But for the most of the surveillance techniques and everything else that he uses it for, that's adequate. That's adequate indeed. And then the control is just for any of the necessary dexterous abilities that it might have to do if it needs to weave in and out between buildings or through trees, or you could just say it's a typical roll. So again, using the rules of control, it's agility or that, depending on whichever one is lower. So yeah, but yeah. So looking at the Black Beauty and its options, that's where we went with that. I had a strong and long discussion with the judge on all of these things, and he agreed with me, funnily enough, on the fighting versus the strength. Happy to do that. And then we've got the martial arts A and B, tossing up losing A, but we'll see. Or losing B, maybe. Just have martial arts A and lose the martial arts B. But that's just sort of what we're looking at. And then of course talents, got a few more contacts and so on. That's easy to manage. So here we have the final page, which we have the Green Hornet, Britt Reed, the Eldar guy, me, High Tech Hero. We've gone with the stats: fighting excellent, agility good, strength typical, endurance excellent, reason remarkable, intuition excellent, and psyche good. giving him a total of health 56 and karma 60. Personal resources excellent, and 5-0. I run with the rules for bad guys because the Green Hornet is a bad guy. Starting popularity is 0 for a bad guy, and the secret ID, Brit Reed, probably a little bit higher obviously, but we'll just run with 5, and then we'll work it from there based on the adventuring. Secret ID ticked. And here we definitely went the Hornet's gun with the details of the knockout gas for a remarkable strength 1 to 10 result. The Hornet Sting, an energy blast heat, remarkable. And the Black Beauty with the 2 types of projectile weapons. One is anti-vehicle and one is anti-personnel. So the people one is excellent and the vehicle one is incredible. So they're the rockets that they fire, because the standard bazooka / rocket or LAW, like, you know, the anti-tank weapons and so on, they're all do 40 damage. Incredible. Could knock this back to 10, might still, but we'll see. And the drone, being that it's the type it is, control typical, speed good, body poor, protection feeble. I have dropped martial arts B, relying on his excellent. There was the compromise to keep the excellent up, and the journalism skill, as well as repair and tinkering. And we'll start with the 2 contacts. He's got a few to choose from, but his listed ones are obviously the Daily Sentinel as Brit Reed, but DA Scanlon knows who he is, so that's the DA's office, or the DA Scanlon specifically, as a direct contact with the department. So that's the Green Hornet. You know who we have to do next, right? So now we're looking at, of course, Kato, who is also a high-tech hero by definition. And what we need to definitely do is make sure that Kato is Kato and not Bruce Lee, as we would all love to put it. Now, looking at the hero's identity, on the original Kato, he is of course Japanese, but in the 1960s version, they gave him that Chinese background. Game-wise, you can call it either way, but his name inside the TV series wasn't ever given, but we know him as Ikano Kato at this stage. His father, Hayashi Kato, was the Kato from the serial sort of Kato, because they were both second-generation heroes. So now we have to work out our stats for our boy, and what we're looking at first is fighting. And what we'll do is we'll compare everything that we know back from before, and looking at what we like. Superior talent is where we're at, so we kind of like that remarkable. So the next thing is agility, and with agility we want to have a look at where we think that's going to be located, and of course we're thinking intensive training in dexterity and or accuracy, and that means we're coming in with excellent as agility. Now in terms of strength, what we're looking at is back to the regular humans, and we kind of like the idea of good because we know that he's the heavy, so that brings us to good. With endurance, we're looking at extensive training and everything else. Now that remarkable level is really only suitable for superheroes, more like Captain America, heightened humans, mutants and so on. So even the big tough rock hard heroes and villains in the human category have excellent, so we'll stick with excellent as the endurance. So looking at the next lot of stats, I'm just going to jump ahead and do Psyche first, just because I think that that's the easiest one to do, because from there he's just going to treat him like a typical human, normal willpower, so we'll just call him typical in that regard, and then we'll come back and have a look and think about what we're doing with and on reason, we like the idea of him still modifying the existing 80s tech because he still does the mechanics and looks after Black Beauty and so on. So that's the best option we think for him, is to come in with excellent and be able to back up Reed when necessary in that regard. For intuition, what we're looking at here, now as much as I would love to give him some really heightened intuition, there have been a couple of instances when he was taken by surprise. Not many, but there were a few. So we're coming back to that more excellent style of intuition. So give him the fine eye for detail and a little bit of detectiveness and so on. So we kind of like that as the way forward for intuition. So looking at all our stats, remarkable, excellent, good, excellent, 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 and typical, which is pretty obviously up the top end, but he is a much more physical guy than he is with the mental type things, and there's definitely not much in the way of mysticism and mesmerism. So our next element that we're looking at are the powers, and what we really want to focus on are some of the tools that he used during his time most frequently as Kato. Now what we're looking at are powers as such, which include the equipment that he uses, and his key items are, of course, the throwing darts that he always had, and what we'll do is we'll call that excellent material strength, and which allows us as a throwing item to be his strength, which is good or 10 damage when he uses them. Primarily he uses them for disarming opponents and so on, but that's where it comes into the higher material strength for a throwing weapon, moves into the strength of the person to a maximum damage of excellent, or the maximum damage of the material strength. So if he had a higher physical strength, that would be no more than 20, which is the material strength of the dart. So the next weapon that we want to have a look at is going to be his nunchaku, and from there we know that he used them a handful of times, and what we've got on that is the material strength of excellent, but because it's a blunt weapon, it actually does 1 column shift more of damage than his strength, because the material strength is higher than his strength, so he gets to add +1 column shift, which also just happens to be the material strength there, so he does 20. So when he's using his nunchaku, he does 20 damage. When he throws his darts, he does 10. But when he punches someone, obviously he does his good strength of damage and so on. So that's where we go from there. So now we're looking at his resources, and what we know is obviously he's gainfully employed by Brit, and this is what he's known as and known for. So what we'll do is we'll stick with the good level of resources that comes as a default with most high-tech heroes. Now we come to the fun part, where we're looking at his talents, and of course we know that Kato has several different types of talents, including fighting skills and weapon skills, as well as his professional skills and so on. So what we do is have a look and see exactly what we think fits with the mold of what we're doing. And remember, we're modeling for Kato and not specifically for the actor, which is Bruce Lee. As we say, talents or the cool stuff. Now, thinking about everything quite closely and what we're after when it comes to the martial arts, thinking, as we know from the different types of martial arts and the way that they've described in the Marvel Superheroes game, we're definitely going to give him A, because, well, that's always a good one, and B for his +1 on his column shift for punching and kicking, etc., and E to give him the +1 to initiative. So that A, B, and E covers him quite well for nearly every scenario. Obviously, we've got a few letters missing in the middle there, but we never really saw him do any of the other C elements, and D is a very specific martial art that's only used by certain heroes, and when you've got like Captain America and co. So the other thing we're looking at is the fact that he's the main driver. So we'll take that from the pilot skill and we'll call that driving. You can sort of like tell from my scrolling, but it's driving. And that will give us the extra +1 column shift for doing all the driving maneuvers and so on. So even if we're using the Black Beauty, which has the typical handling, will go up to good because of the piloting. So the last skill that I want to give him is one for helping out around the house, or the equipment and so on. So we'll call that get back to the repair and tinkering side of things. And this will also allow him to add a column shift to his reason, which will let him do co-work with Reed, and the two will still be closely enough in their reasons to be able to give them a boost when they're doing anything fancy. But since he's the primary mechanic for the Black Beauty, it seemed most reasonable for him to have repair and tinkering as a final skill. And going through his list of contacts, they're not as extensive as what Brit's would be, so we'll just keep it tight to the Daily Sentinel and pretty much just his immediate close circle. He will have some floating contacts, and they were picked at on occasion, especially culturally, I should say, in a very delicate way. But that's pretty much all he would have is the Daily Sentinel as an actual starting contact. So here we are with our final character sheet, and of course we've got Akano Kato as his name, secret ID. Hero's name is Kato. Surprised that no one's put the two together, but fair enough. He rarely calls him Kato in public outside of when it's in front of people. These are his current stats, as we've decided, with remarkable, excellent, good, excellent, 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 and typical. And that gives us some pretty decent starting stats, at the very least, but good, healthy, chunky bits. So that 80 health that comes together is very respectable. And while it's not Daredevil level, which makes sense, it's still up there in terms of better than most. His karma is 46, which is reasonable, and so his resources are also good. That's something that's for his professional wage. Then he's got his throwing darts. As we said, material strength excellent, so that does good damage when he throws them. And his nunchaku, which allows him to do 20 damage when he pulls them out. So if he really needs to bash somebody up, he can increase his damage from bringing them out rather than just relying on his fists. And of course his talents, martial arts ABE, his pilot, driving, and repair and tinkering, which all come together nicely. His one floating contact, or his one solid contact, is the Daily Sentinel, but that's what it is. So together, between him and the Green Hornet, they have quite a good complement of product. And that is the end of working out the modeling side of things for Marvel Superheroes Advanced Set. So I want to thank everybody, of course, for sticking by this and getting into it. If you have your own ideas for modeling, and I'm happy to hear what people would have thought about the different types of stats that I used and so on. But I think I was being kind of balanced with the way that it was all put out. But anyway, so hopefully this is the sort of content that people still like to see. I wanted to throw out something that was a little bit different, again, not just the usual. And modeling characters is not something that's really shown or done very often. And I just thought it'd be worthwhile, especially with something as cool as the Green Hornet. So thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone's support. It's fantastic. I want to thank everyone for helping out how they can. Please put any comments you've got. I'd love to hear about what you do, as well as what you'd like to see come up and what you'd like to see do in other ways. Thank you very much again, and I look forward to it all. Congratulations for staying this long, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Bye.